Christians are called to live a sacrificial life, but my hope is that each one of us will be able to take that into our lives, and we'll think about how can we sacrifice for the common good, like we heard yesterday from Dr. Lester, but also how can we sacrifice for others? And we're going to be hearing from our faculty today about that, because our faculty, many of us, do have lives outside of the school. And it is true. And there's a number of us that truly do try to live sacrificially in so many different ways. And my hope is that you'll see some of our faculty in a new way, but also to be curious about what the other faculty are doing, how they're trying to live a sacrificial life. Now, the wonderful thing about Dr. Lester yesterday was he kept talking about how it's about really, truly sacrificing. Not just a sacrifice of convenience, but sacrificing so that someone might be able to survive and thrive in their life. And how can we start thinking about that? And think about that in a way that isn't just maybe through charity, even though that's a really good way. Maybe not just through giving money, even though that is necessary. But how do we do it with our lives and in different ways? And we're going to be examining that today. Now, one of the things with Dr. Lester that we didn't mention was he's written 5 books. I would love for you to check them out. I've read 2 of them. They are fantastic. They talk a lot about his story, but they are just amazing books that I really do encourage you to read, especially one of our own from here in Atlanta. And as I always say, the Lord works in mysterious ways. Yesterday, the middle school, during their Christian Emphasis Week, yesterday, right after we got done, we walked over there because a number of the students were building shelves for Zion's Closet. And it wasn't something that I planned with Reverend McCormick or anything. We just found out that when Dr. Lester was here, we were like, we need to have him go over and just thank the students that were doing that at the same day that he was here. Pretty wonderful moment. And so today, we want to see how our faculty are living sacrificially in a holistic way, that they're living sacrificially holistically. And now we're going to start off with Bethany coming up to say the prayer.
Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for each and every single person in this room. Thank you for all the friendships, connections, and memories we forged over the years, and for all that you're teaching us through one another. As we reflect on what it means to live a sacrificial life, teach us to love others the way you first loved us, fully, selflessly, and wholeheartedly. Help us to be people who give generously, serve humbly, and choose others before ourselves, even when it's hard. Remind us that real strength is found not in being served, but in serving, just as your Son Jesus showed us. During this Holy Week, help us to remember Jesus' sacrifice and love, and let that example shape how we treat those around us. Guide us so that we may sharpen one another, encourage one another, and build each other up in your image. Open our hearts so that we don't just hear this message, but truly live it out in how we love and care for others. May everything we say, do, and become point back to you. Amen.
Thank you, Bethany. So often when we think of sacrifice and the ways that we can do it, it does often go to the way of how can I help on the weekend, or how can I help with a charity, how can I give my money? And those are important, good things. But it can go even further than that. And we're going to be looking at many different avenues. We're going to see a faculty member that cares deeply about a charity, about friends of theirs that are doing great work here in Atlanta. We're going to see that some people had a way to serve their country, to actually think about how do I sacrifice for someone else, the ultimate sacrifice. How can I donate in such a way that is beyond just money, but bigger than that? We're going to see stories about how we can take our talent and give it to others so that they can become better. And so we're going to see the many different ways that you can holistically give and serve and to sacrifice. And our first faculty member is going to be Ms. Harless, who's going to talk about giving through a mission.
Hello. I'd like to introduce you to my friends, Claire and Nick Morachek, and their beautiful children, Millie and Jack. I'm going to take a few minutes today to talk to you about Millie. Millie was an energetic little girl who loved life and her family, especially her little brother, Jack. In 2020, just shy of her 3rd birthday, Millie was diagnosed with rhabdomyosarcoma, a childhood cancer that was growing in her brain. Millie and her parents faced this unimaginable diagnosis head on. The family, especially Millie, fought this cancer with everything they had. Unfortunately, Millie passed away in 2021, just shy of her 4th birthday. Millie's passing left me sad, angry, and confused. And as distraught as I was, I knew that what I was feeling paled in comparison to what Nick and Claire were experiencing. They were living every parent's biggest fear, forced to carry a grief that would never go away. Millie's parents miraculously found a way to live in both grief and joy by establishing the Mighty Millie Foundation. Their nonprofit funds childhood cancer research, which is woefully underfunded, and delivers popsicles to 150 pediatric cancer treatment centers nationwide, creating small moments of big joy for the brave children fighting this disease. Inspired by my love for the Moracheks and their fortitude in the face of horrible circumstances, I decided to give a portion of my resources, both financial and time, to continue Millie's fight against childhood cancer. Fundraising in September in honor of Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, attending a popsicle stand, or setting up a booth at the Alternative Gift Fair are just some of the ways I give of my time to ease the burden of families in the midst of their cancer battle. The work that I do is sacrificial living, but when you're providing hope and joy to those around you, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice, and it fuels my desire to do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harless. So charity and giving of your resources is an important way that we can sacrifice, but it's not the only way. Another way that we can do it is a number of people in our country do, is like Mr. Boomer, who gave part of his time and his life to sacrificing for our country by being a part of the Marine Corps. Mr. Boomer?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm excited to do it and to talk about my experience in the Marine Corps. My sacrifice, I think, first of all, I sacrificed my childhood. You might be asking, why did he say that? Well, I think the United States Marine Corps took a 26-year-old self-absorbed child and turned him into a man. When I signed up, I had a goal for myself, but it was the goal that I had myself that drove the decision more so than a clear understanding of what it meant to serve. I'm not sure who got the better end of the deal, me or the Marine Corps, but I'm pretty sure, I don't know, I think it's me. The amount of sacrifice you have to go through to earn the title of United States Marine is all-encompassing. All of your wants and your perceived needs are summarily denied, right from the very beginning. Any ideas about how much sleep, food, recovery time, or any notion of what your physical and emotional limits are, how much pain you can endure, they will all immediately be blown up. Okay, the process lasts close to a year, and it's really nothing short of a crucible. Okay, some Marines make the ultimate sacrifice. And to them, we should all be eternally grateful and wish for them God's peace. But all Marines give up their freedom, the freedom that they fight for you, they give up for themselves. Simple things, like deciding when and if to fight, is not a Marine's choice. Deciding what specific job you will do is not a Marine's choice. Ultimately, the goal that I had going in was never realized, and I did a job different than the one I thought I would be doing once I got through the training phase. Deciding where you will live, a Marine is not free to do. Your very freedom of speech and expression is not something you're entitled to. My commander-in-chief was, and for all Marines will be, a civilian. The civilian commander-in-chief will decide how we're to be deployed and how we're to be used. Marines have the ability to vote, but whether the commander-in-chief is somebody you agree with or disagree with, it really matters not. Right? You have a mission, and if that civilian commander tells you to stand down, even if you felt the need to fight, you will stand down. Even if personally you disagreed possibly with maybe a war that was getting ready to happen and you didn't think it was right that we go fight, if you are told to fight, you will go fight. Okay, so think about these times politically in America and how divisive things can be, and how we hold these rights to speak about our feelings about any of those things. A Marine doesn't do that. A Marine solemnly takes the oath that no matter what, I'm going to do what my country asks of me to do, potentially with the sacrificing of my own life. So with all that difficulty, that year-long crucible where I was sleep-deprived, hungry, in pain, tired, frustrated, right, for so much of that time. The job was dangerous. I operated in an environment of fear. And just learning to deal and operate with fear. How can I now look back on those years and recognize that they were actually some of the happiest times in my life? Those two ideas almost sound incongruent on the surface, but if I'm being honest with you, that's precisely how I feel about it. And I've had time to reflect upon my time in the Marine Corps. How could I have been so happy? And I think the answer to it is really quite simple, in that during those years, my personal sense of purpose was perhaps the most clear for me that it ever has been. What is purpose? Well, I think we all have self-interest in mind when we take a job. I had a goal, and part of it was to be compensated, part of it was to put a roof over my head and take care of my kind of cute wife, and all of that. And yes, self-interest is a part of of our purpose, but it's merely a small subset of it. Purpose in a happy life has to extend far, far beyond self-interest. And that's precisely what it was for me. I knew what I was doing was dangerous. I knew at times it was a struggle. I knew that I could pay the ultimate sacrifice. But those were some of the happiest days of my life. It is my belief that we are designed precisely by our loving Creator this way, to live lives of purpose, where that purpose extends far, far beyond whatever ideas we have about self-interest. And some of the talks about what's that? Somebody want to tell me? Yesterday? Oxytocin, thank you. Oxytocin, there was a scientific reason for it, right? But when you live a life full of purpose, there'll be more of oxytocin in your life. You will be happier as a result. And my years in teaching, I think, reinforced that idea as well. Thank you for listening.
A grandfather-in-law, a father, and a brother who combined have 50 years of service in the military. We know that it is a sacrifice. But that's not all. We can also sacrifice by giving of our talents to others. Atlanta's own Bob Lupton wrote a book called Charity Detox, and he said what probably could help more people in our cities and in our world is if people that were great business people, great marketers, great financial abilities, if they went and shared that talent with people in different communities, it could change more of the world than we could ever understand. If we actually shared our talents, instead of just saying, oh, what's the least I can do, but how can I go and invest what I know well in someone else, we could change the world. And so, by sacrificing your talents for others, we can see how we can help others in so many great ways. And Miss Wu's going to come up and talk about how she sacrifices her talent for others with music.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? On a lighter fare, let me begin with a few questions. What does success look like to you? Is it being the best? Standing out? Being recognized for what you do? For a long time, that's how I defined it. I believed in success in music meant reaching the highest level, playing with precision, earning recognition, and standing out. You see, I studied performance at the Juilliard and Yale universities, and I went to perform professionally alongside extraordinary musicians, some of whom you have come across, whom you've heard. It was everything I had worked toward through discipline, persistence, and sacrifice. And I loved it. I was deeply fulfilled by performing. But over time, something began to shift. Not all at once, but gradually. I began to feel a pull towards something different, a quiet but persistent sense that maybe just what I had been given, my training, my experiences, my love for music was meant for something beyond just myself. And over time, my definition of success began to change. I realized that success isn't just about how far you go, but it's about what you make possible for others. Listening to the speakers before me today reminds me that there are many different ways to give of ourselves and many different ways to make an impact. Some paths are visible and some are not, but all of them matter. Let me take a moment. Faculty and staff, if you had a career or role outside of teaching, would you please raise your hand? Students, take a look around. These are the people who have built lives, developed skills, pursued different paths, and have chosen to be here investing in you. Like many of them, my path was not a straight line. At a certain point, I made a decision to take everything I had worked for and invest it more fully in others, to help students grow, to help them find their voice, to help them discover what they're capable of. And that choice changed everything. Because in that process, I began to understand something more deeply about my craft. A note is just a note, one sound, nothing special. But a note played with accuracy, with intention, with heart, can stop someone. It can make them feel something they didn't expect. It can stay with them long after the sound is gone. And that's why I care so much about every note. Not for the recognition, not for the applause, but for the impact it might have on someone else. And over time, I realized teaching is the same kind of work. It's showing up day after day, demonstrating, encouraging, repeating, and guiding students. Sometimes the progress is slow, and sometimes it's invisible. And if you're not paying attention, it can feel like nothing is happening at all. But then there's a moment when something clicks, when a student who struggled suddenly plays with confidence, when they create something they couldn't before, when they begin to believe in themselves in a new way. And in that moment, you realize the impact matters more than the recognition. That's what we're doing here. All of us are. It's not about just playing the right notes. It's about what those notes can do, what they can express, and who they can reach. It's about being part of something bigger than yourself. Sometimes that looks like performing on stage, and sometimes it looks like setting up a chairs and stands before and after rehearsals in McCain, which, if I'm being honest, was not exactly how I once imagined my musical journey. But those moments matter too, because being part of something bigger than yourself isn't always glamorous. It's not always visible. It's not always recognized, but it always matters. Every stand you move, every rehearsal you show up to, every note you play with intention, it all contributes to something greater than yourself. So maybe success isn't about standing out. Maybe it's about showing up, giving your best, consistently, faithfully, even when no one is watching, and using what you've been given to make a difference in someone else's life. Because in the end, it's not the recognition that lasts, it's the impact. The moment you realize a note that you did something, a note you played, a word you said, a rehearsal you showed up for, helps someone believe in themselves. And sometimes that impact is only possible because you chose to give something of yourself so someone else could grow.
Sacrificing for others through your talents. It can be even bigger than this. I'm hoping you're starting to see there's so many different ways that we can do this. And we can actually use our even physical bodies for this sort of thing. This is very personal for me because 3 years ago, my wife donated one of her kidneys altruistically. She didn't even know the person, but she said, "I've got two. I can help." And we have a faculty member that can talk about the same thing. This is an important part. I hope that you will all think about becoming organ donors when you sign up for your driver's license even. But Mr. Batchelor, will you come and speak to us?
So in 2010, I was participating in the Westminster blood drive downstairs in Presley, and a new table was set up from the Be the Match group, which was asking donors to join their global bone marrow donation database. I knew vaguely that bone marrow transplants helped cancer patients, but not a whole lot more than that. What I've since learned is that bone marrow is the soft tissue within our bones that helps produce stem cells, and stem cells are the cells that fight cancer. For people who are diagnosed with blood cancers like lymphoma or leukemia, bone marrow transplants are often required because it can help patients either receive a higher level of chemotherapy or it gives them the number of stem cells that they need to fight the cancer in their system. In order for patients to match, they have to be able to accept the donation, and they and their donor have to match in 12 specific areas of their DNA. So in most cases, you have to rely on a family member. In rare cases, patients need to find a stranger that they can match with, and a process that can take months or even years is taken to try and find people that match in those 12 areas. So back at Westminster, they asked me if I wanted to sign up. I agreed. They spent 10 seconds swabbing the inside of my cheek, and that was it. I never really thought about the sign-up process again. 3.5 years later, in July of 2013, I got an email that I was a possible match. They told me that all they could say was that there was a 13-year-old girl in Europe that needed a donation and that I was one of the global finalists that the doctors had selected. I was warned that there are two processes for the donation. One was a painful way and one was a scary way, and that they were looking at me for the painful option. I was told that this was the chance where if I wanted to back out, they understood, and this was the moment to do it. I told them that I was happy to donate, and we began to prepare for the donation a couple months later in New York. In order to prepare my body for the donation, I needed a series of injections over 5 days that would make my body overproduce my stem cells, so doctors had more to draw out of my own body. On the first day, I went to the hospital for my injection, and I had the awkward experience of being sent to the cancer ward and waiting in the same chairs as chemo patients while I was just waiting for a couple of shots. When I went home, my muscles were stiff, like the first day of working out after a long layoff, but nothing too bad. On day 2, I flew to New York, and I walked to the hospital and back in order to get some exercise around the injection procedure. On day 3, my body ached so much that I was unable to walk and I had to take a cab to the hospital. On day 4, my lovely nurse Linda, who had the most amazing Long Island accent that I'd ever heard, had to come to me and meet me in my hotel room because I wasn't able to get up and walk around the city. By day 5, I was in constant pain and unable to sleep at all, but I had completed the injections and went to the hospital the next morning to donate. The donation itself was a lot like donating blood. I had one tube pulling out blood, plasma, and stem cells, and another tube putting the plasma back into my other arm. What I had been told, but I hadn't really prepared for, was the fact that the whole process involves sitting in a chair with the needles in your arms for about 8 hours. The needles first hurt, then they ached, and eventually caused bruising up and down my arms. But the extraction was successful, and they got all the stem cells they needed for the girl in Europe. 6 months later, I got an email from the organization following up. They let me know that the transplant was successful, the girl's body had accepted the donation, and she had no recurrence of whatever cancer she had. I figured that was the end of my journey, since it's so rare to match once. But in 2015, I found out that I had matched with another 18-year-old. I began the process again, began the screenings, but in the end, that patient ended up not needing a transplant. And I've always hoped that that meant that they were able to survive without one. A year later in 2016, I matched for a third time with a 19-year-old woman in South America and prepared for another round of donations, this time in DC. There was a slight issue at the beginning because they thought that I had pneumonia, which would prevent me from donating, and we had to frantically come up with a plan to give me a series of rapid-acting antibiotics, inhalers, and chest x-rays because they were worried the girl wouldn't survive in time to find another donor. Thankfully, my lungs were cleared about a week before the deadline, and I went to Washington the week before Faculty Forum started here on campus. I went through the whole process again. 5 days of injections, muscles aching and hurting increasingly each day until I couldn't leave my hotel room, and sat in the chair again. This time, due to my savvy experience, I got out of the chair in a mere 6.5 hours. After I donated, I was deeply uncomfortable with people who said things like, "What a sacrifice," or "That's so noble," or "I can't believe that you did that," because that wasn't how I viewed the process. It seemed to me that this was more of an act of duty. I was told that I could help another person, so it was my responsibility to say yes, I would help. In the years since, however, my wife and I have had 2 friends from college who needed their own bone marrow donations. We watched people we cared about struggle to find matches, to manage the frustration of siblings that weren't able to help their brother, the hopelessness of seeing the married couple waiting for months for a match and worrying that it might never come, the letdown of finding out that they had found a match, but then the donor backed out at the last second. It helped me better understand why people view donation as a sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice in the sense of what I gave up as a donor, but it is a sacrifice in terms of how you can help someone else in their fight against cancer. They knew a stranger believed enough in them to take the time to donate, and if a stranger believes in you that much, that small act can give you the hope that you need to believe that you can fight and win in your own battle. Thank you very much.
Bone marrow donations are some of the most painful donations that you can give, so thank you, Mr. Batchelor. There's even, for some people, this concept of sacrificing for others is not just figurative. For some, it is a true, literal, real possibility to donate or to sacrifice your life. And our head of security, Mr. Spivey, has lived that as a Secret Service agent. So please welcome Mr. Spivey up.
Well, David, thank you for inviting me to be here. Thank you for being here to listen. So when Reverend Charney first asked me about coming to speak, I immediately said yes, because I'm thinking to myself, I know exactly what I want to say. I know what he's probably asking about, the sacrificial life that I led in the Secret Service. The running joke in the Secret Service was that if they wanted you to have a family and a personal life, they would have issued you one, because the job is consuming. And I used to interview young applicants whenever they were trying to get on the job, and I would tell them, the work-life balance is going to be this. It's going to really consume. So why did I want to do that? I wanted to be a part of something big, something that was bigger than me, something that was that you had to reach for to attain. And for me, that job was with the United States Secret Service. It took effort to get on the job. I had to work hard to get to the job. But again, I wanted something that was, I wanted to be a part of something that was bigger than me, something that was worthwhile, something that was meaningful. I worked through, I did it for 22 years. I missed holidays, I missed birthdays, I missed celebrations, I missed a lot of personal events. When I first hired on with the job, I was a single man. Somehow I got lucky, was able to find and meet my wife. We got married. We had 2 daughters while I was on the job. All the while, I am still doing the job. I'm traveling the world. The mission itself of protecting the President of the United States is non-discretionary. It has to be done at whatever cost. And if you're a part of the Secret Service, you're the people that have to do that job. And we understood that. And we knew there was nobody else we could pass this off to. Hey, we'll take a pass. You do it this time. It's us. And we only have a finite number of people to do it. So that meant whatever the hours were, however many days of the week that it took, we did it. It meant traveling. It meant part of the time I would keep a suitcase half packed so that I could be ready to go to the airport on a moment's notice. So I really appreciated some of the comments that Doug Boomer made, some of the parallels that I can relate to. The part about the commander-in-chief. The Secret Service agent does not pick his or her president. I worked for 4 sitting presidents, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Here in this picture, I'm in Spain in an aircraft hangar waiting for President Obama to come out and speak to a large crowd. You know what I'm guarding? The podium, because that is his secure podium, and it is a protective podium for him. So I am guarding his podium to make sure that he's coming out to a secure and safe area. But again, we don't pick our president. The voters pick the president, but we protect that person sacrificially the same way, no matter what, because they are the occupier of the Oval Office. They are the leader of the free world. They are the leader of our democracy. So we are ensuring that that person remains safe, that they are able to lead, they are able to do their job. I often compared it to, like, that was our football. No one's getting that football from us. We took care of that person the same way regardless. However, it occurred to me after Reverend Charney asked me to speak, he probably was thinking more about the more obvious sacrifice that I might potentially have to make. And again, another parallel with Doug Boomer about paying the ultimate sacrifice. That again, you may have heard, it's kind of cliche to say it, but people would say, would you really take a bullet for the president? Well, yes, but none of us live with that on a daily basis. None of us thought about that on a routine. We agreed to that when we signed up. We agreed to it when we took the job, just like Doug did when he joined the Marines. There is that potential that you're going to have to pay the ultimate sacrifice. But we were confident enough in what we were doing, how we were doing it, and who we were doing it with, that we were not going to let that happen. But that was a potential. And it was still an honor to serve. I wasn't special because I did that job. I was blessed to have that job. I was blessed to be able to do that job and to serve my country in the way that I did. And again, more parallels with Doug. As I look back on my career, I've been here for 7 years now. And every year that I look back on my career, it's even sweeter in the rearview mirror. I'm grateful for what I got to do. I'm grateful for what I did. And it kind of puts me in a small group of not many people have done that job. But it makes me feel confident. It makes me feel accomplished and proud of what I did do. So in closing, I'll ask you this. Why do we serve? Why do we sacrifice? Why do our colleagues here serve and sacrifice? Well, it's because Jesus Christ did. Jesus said, I came to serve, not to be served. And he did. And then he paid the ultimate sacrifice for us by dying on the cross. But then we celebrate Easter Sunday because that is the resurrection of Jesus. So we have hope. We know that sacrifice is good. Sacrifice produces good things. And as you get the opportunity in life, as you begin careers, and you're able to do the same thing, you'll find that same fulfillment. Thank you and happy Easter.
Thank you, Mr. Spivey. We have one last faculty member, staff person that is going to come and talk to us today about donation as well. And so, Ms. Lagrone, can you come and talk to us about consistently donating?
Thank y'all. So I'm very privileged to be able to follow all these wonderful, wonderful stories of sacrifice. I became interested in blood donation, the concept of blood donation, as a young nurse in the early 80s, and I was working inpatient at Piedmont Hospital. and a doctor would write an order for a patient to receive blood. And it became apparent that it was a pretty involved process. It wasn't just grabbing a bag of IV fluids off a shelf. It was kind of detailed, and basically I realized, well, it takes another person. It takes another human being to complete this doctor's order. So I began donating kind of in the early 80s, and as Dr. Charney so graciously reminded me, that's 40 years ago. So I've been donating blood for 40 years. Recently, the last 10 years, I've been participating in a blood drive sponsored by the synagogue on the corner of Northside Parkway and Peachtree Battle. They sponsor this blood drive every 3 months, and I donate with a dear friend. We go out to lunch, and then we go to the synagogue, and it has just been a wonderful experience. We've gotten to know the members of the synagogue, and also a lot of the Red Cross, the regular employees that work there. So it's kind of been a community, and it's something I really look forward to every 3 months. As I am donating blood, and I often think and try to think of the person that's going to be receiving my blood and hoping that it makes a difference and saying a prayer for them. And in that way, it's not a sacrifice. It's really been a privilege. Also, it's a privilege to be able to be healthy enough to donate. And I do not take that for granted. And so I just have felt very fortunate to have been able to make a difference in this way. It's really vital. There's no substitute for blood from another human being. I know they're working on it, but it hadn't been manufactured yet. So blood donation is still very vital and crucial. So thank you, and if you have any questions about blood donation, please drop by the infirmary. I'm happy to talk to you about it. Thank you so much.
Ellen, come here. There's a reason that I put Miss LaGrone at the end. I want you to come here. I want everybody to look at this. Come here. This is her Westminster senior photo from 1975. We'll just say it.
75.
And so Ellen is retiring after 21 years of being at Westminster this year. If you've ever been to a nurse's office, raise your hand. You've helped all those people. Just want to think about this. Over 21 years, if she helped 3 people a day, only 3 people a day, that would be over 11,000 people that she's helped at this school. She's helped us through a pandemic, and every time she's sacrificed her own health when she's had to deal with a sick student or a sick person. And so we're very grateful for you and for your 21 years.
I bleed Westminster green.
That's right. Thank you. Sacrificing for others can be done in so many ways, and you saw that today. I want you to be creative. I want you to be the type of person that goes to your significant other or your family member, just like Dr. Lester did, and said, I think I have an idea, let me know what you think, so that we can be the type of people that can change the world. We do have one last announcement from our sophomore class. that they're going to tell us about the way that we can sacrifice in the coming weeks.
All right. So, first of all, thank you so much to all of our amazing faculty for showing us sacrifice through your own personal stories. We are so, so lucky to have you on campus. Can we get another huge round of applause for all of our speakers today? And another big thank you to Reverend Charney for coordinating all of these inspiring messages throughout the week. Let's give a round of applause for Rev. I can tell you guys that he practices exactly what he preaches because in a couple weeks, Reverend Charney will be making his own sacrifice along with Mr. Pitts, Dr. Davis, and one of the sophomore class officers. Sophomores, you already know this, but our grade is partnering with a nonprofit organization, Rise Against Hunger, with the goal of packaging 10,000 meals for those in need. Take a moment and think about the impact that 10,000 meals can have.
We have an opportunity to help people that don't have enough food to be fed every day. We have a way that each of you can be a part of this and help someone in need. One way you can do that is to help us with our partnership with Rise Against Hunger, because next week you will have an opportunity to raise $4,100 to feed hundreds of people for an entire school year. That's the same number as feeding lunch to every Westminster student, K through 12, for a month and a week.
So in order to do this, we'll be doing Stuck for a Buck, where we'll stick people to the wall for just $1 per one piece of tape. The goal is for someone to be stuck hanging to the wall when removing a chair. The participants include Mr. Pitts, Dr. Davis, one of the sophomore class officers, and Reverend Charney. So in the next couple of weeks, you'll have the opportunity to be sacrificial.
All grades can participate, and even a small sacrifice can go such a long way. So let's each sacrifice a little bit of money for the good of others and hopefully have fun in the process. Thank you.
This is the problem. This is the problem you have when you do this topic. You actually have to live by it. So I will hopefully be stuck to the wall. Tomorrow is our Easter service. So remember, that means it's a dress-up day. So everybody be dressed up tomorrow. You are dismissed.